Hi student, welcome. In this video we will be learning all the test controls. Test controls are similar to your internal control system with respect to or with regards to cash sales, cash purchases and wage payments, which we have discussed in PPA. So the same kind of aspects will be there here in test control, and we have 5 to 6 components here which we learn test control, how a test control is going to be done. The first item is sales system. In sales system, normally the control on the sales system will be done through invoices and authorization. So the common internal control over the sales procedures will be sales invoices, the chronological order of the sales invoices, purchase order, authorization, credit, period limit. So these are all the things which the auditor is going to check before the testing procedure or the control procedure. So we will be discussing the control objectives and what it includes and what are the control procedure over sales and debtors, because when it comes to sales we will be doing cash sales as well as credit sales. What is the testing for or the objective of sales system? For many business, sales are made on credit, and the objective for the sales cycle is include control over the debtors. Whatever the transaction you have done for in the form of sales, you should have the control. If it is a cash transaction, you will be getting cash, the transaction will be get over. Whenever you are doing credit transaction, you will be having certain period of risk that whether the amount is going to be received or not. So to have a control on the debtors, the testing for sales system is going to be done. So the control objective includes the customer order should be authorized and controlled, recorded in order to execute them properly. Each and every invoice should be authorized by the person or by the responsible officer. Secondly, goods shipped, work completed, that has to be recorded and controlled and it has to be having a written evidence or an invoice issued, and the revenue or the amount which you are going to record, each and everything should be recorded in the book. For example, goods shipped, whether the goods from the dispatch counter has been shifted to the client's place, work is completed or not. So for all these actions, whether the transaction has been made or not will be checked. Then goods returned and claims by the customer. If any goods returned, then the goods return has to be recorded, and if any claims were claimed by the client, then that has to be claimed, maybe discount or any other offers given by the company. So that has to be checked by the auditor. Then the invoice and the credit should be appropriately checked for accuracy. So accuracy maintain agirbeku. Then that has to be authorization. ಯಾರ್ಯಾರೋ ಸೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆಗಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಒಂದು ಇನ್ವಾಯ್ಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನು ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ನಾವೀಗ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಐ ವಿಲ್ ನಾಟ್ ಗೋ ಫಾರ್ ದೋಸ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಗೇನ್. ಸೊ ದ ಆಡಿಟರ್ ಇಸ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಚೆಕ್ ದಿ ಇನ್ವಾಯ್ಸ್ and the credit whether it has been recorded with accuracy or not. Then authorized customer transaction, and only those transactions should be accurately entered in the accounting records. There is no fake or false entries were recorded in the books of account. Only the authorized transactions were recorded in the books of account. That has to be ensured by the auditor. And finally, there should be procedures to ensure that the sales invoices are subsequently paid by the customer, and that doubtful amount are identified in order to determine any provision or write-offs is required. In simple to say, you have made a credit sales, and over a period of time you have to collect the amount by the company's effort or the department's effort. If any amount is not received, then that has to be treated as doubtful debts or the bad debts, and in your profits that has to be written off. So this is the overall objectives related to sales system. Then control procedure over sales and debtors. There is a large number of controls. For example, in a control procedure or at the stages of a sales cycle are orders, dispatch, invoice, credit note, return invoice, receivables are the bad debts. So these processes are also detailed ಆಗಿ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನು ಕಲ್ತಿದ್ದೀವಿ. So I am going to give only the points here. The first point is order. So whenever you are placed with an order by the customer, you have to differentiate whether he is an existing customer or a new customer. So if he is an existing customer, you know what kind of credit limit has to be given and how he will be giving or the payments to you, everything you know. And if a new customer come to you for a credit sales option, then you have to check whether he can pay you within the due date or not. So all the orders which are received by the existing customer and new customer has to be pre-numbered with the sales order documents. Once you are confirmed to give the goods to those existing customer or a new customer, then you are going to check whether the order which is placed by the customer, whether it is authorized or not. If it is authorized, then the goods are dispatched to them. Then the auditor or the company's internal control system has to check the sales order document for the dispatch note, because the goods has to be dispatched to the customer through a dispatch counter. So the sales order is now moved to the dispatch counter with a dispatch note. And at the same time, dispatch note should also be pre-numbered, and a register has to be kept which they are going to record all the dispatch notes given by the sales department, and which is also called as a sales invoice or the customer order. So the dispatch note should be authorized before the goods which leaves the company, or before packing the goods. The dispatch note should be authorized by the salesperson or the sales department manager, and regular checks should be made to ensure that all the dispatch has been invoiced. Whatever the goods which are going out of the company, that has to be invoiced, or all the voucher has to be prepared for those goods which are moving from the company. Once the goods come to the dispatch counter, invoice has to be prepared, and the invoice has to be authorized by a responsible official. Once the invoice or a credit note is drawn by the responsible officer, that has to be recorded in the daybook record, sales register, and the sales ledger control book, and all the books of accounts which is related to that particular transaction. Thirdly, the sales invoices or the credit notes has to be checked. The auditor has to check the prices which is mentioned in the sales invoices with the price list. Then all the invoice and credit note should be serially numbered, and regular checks has to be taken to verify the numbers of the each and every invoices. And if any copies or if any invoices is cancelled, then the copies of the cancelled invoices has to be retained by the dispatch counter, because if any cancellation of invoices is made, the dispatch note also to be given to the sales department that the goods has not been moved out of the company. So the cancelled invoices should be signed by a responsible official that the transaction has been barred, and the auditor is going to check whether the invoice has been prepared with the due income or the offers which are given to the customer. Any claims have been deducted, the tax, the rebate, all the octroi, these are the things will be there in the bill, and the auditor is going to check all these things when he verify the invoices. Then return, if any goods are returned by the customer, that has to be checked for obvious damage and why it is returned, because whatever the goods is sold by the company, if any goods are returned, what is the reason for the goods return, whether it is damage, whether it is not of a good quality, whether it is the different material which the order has been placed. So the reason has to be checked by the company, and all goods returned should be used to prepare an appropriate credit notes. So whatever the goods which you have received as a good returns, that has to be added to your stocks, and that has to be deducted from your total sales made. Finally, receivables or the debtors. A receivable ledger or the debtors account is already maintained in your company with the sales figures. So the receivable ledger or the debtors ledger has to be checked whether the cash received against to that transaction. So the statement for the cash received for the transaction is going to end the transaction of that particular cash sale or a credit sale. So we have talking about credit sale. Whenever you receive a money after the due date, that will end the transaction, and if any debt or if any amount which is not so received, which is not yet received by the company, then the company has to think about making doubtful debts or a bad debt of that particular sales, and after certain period of time that has to be written off by the company through profits. So these are the test controls or a testing of the sales system that an auditor is going to do internally with the control procedure over sales and debtors. The next topic is testing the payroll system. Payroll also we have discussed in the internal check because wage payments. So the control objectives in respect of a wages or a salary system are as follows. The first one is when you are paying the wages or a salary, then you should be made only with the respect of the clients or the employees who are authorized in the company. Those who are regular to your company. There is no fake employee names in the wage sheet or the payroll system. Secondly, payment should be made at authorized rates of pay. Whether you are paying on a daily basis, hourly basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis, so the rate should be authorized by the company or you have to pay as per the AOA of the company. Thirdly, wages and salaries payment should be in accordance with the records of the work performed. Just as I said, based on the time, based on the product, based on the sales, you are going to pay the wages or the salary, and that has to be based on the work performed. Fourthly, the payroll and payroll deductions, for example, ESI, PF, tax and any other benefits given to the employee, then the payroll deductions will be calculated accurately and that has to be deducted from the gross salary to pay the net wages or the net salary. Fifth one, payment should be made to the correct employees. You have to pay whatever the amount is earned by him or her within the period of time. For example, 1 month ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ದಿನ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಆ ಒಂದು ದಿನಕ್ಕೆ ನೀವು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸ್ಯಾಲ್ರಿ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಒಬ್ಬ HR ಗೆ ನೀವೇನು ಸ್ಯಾಲ್ರಿ ಕೊಡ್ತೀರೋ ಆ ಸ್ಯಾಲ್ರಿ HR ಕೊಡಬೇಕು. ದೆನ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯಿ, ಸಬಾರ್ಡಿನೇಟ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯಿಗೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಸ್ಯಾಲ್ರಿ ಕೊಡ್ತೀರಿ, ಸೊ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಪೇ ದ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಟು ದ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಎಂಪ್ಲಾಯಿ ಫಾರ್ ದ ವರ್ಕ್ ವಿಚ್ ಇಸ್ ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಡ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಫೈನಲಿ, ದ ಲಯಬಿಲಿಟೀಸ್ ಟು ದ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಅಥಾರಿಟೀಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಸೆಕ್ಯೂರಿಟಿ should be properly recorded. Whatever the amount you have taking that has TDS or a professional tax, so that has to be properly accounted or that has to be appropriated from salaries account to the tax account. So now you know what are the objectives of testing the payroll system. So now we will understand what are the control procedures with respect to wages and salaries. First one is approval and control of documents. How a payroll system is created, on what basis the payment is made. Firstly, there should be a written authorization to employ or dismiss any employee. So for all the employees in the organization, you will be giving an appointment letter. So that will be the written authorization for the employment. That has to be checked by the auditor at the beginning. Secondly, changes in rate of pay should be authorized in writing by the official outside the wage department. Whatever the changes, for example, if any increment or incentives given to the employee, that is also authorized by the official. Thirdly, overtime worked should be authorized. If any employee worked more than the allotted hours or more than the allotted time, that has to be authorized and the overtime labor has to be paid, wages has to be paid. An independent official should review the payroll and sign it. So we have also discussed this in internal check. So the wage sheet has to be prepared or the payroll has to be prepared by the separate staff of the organization, that the internal check is easily ascertained. So an independent official or an accountant or a supervisor, anybody who is nowhere related to the payment of the payroll, so he can check or review the payroll and he can countersign that by I have been checked this. Then the wages check should be signed by the two signatories and agreed with the signed payroll. So the person who is made the wage sheet or a payroll and the person who verifies the wage sheet or a payroll, both has to be signed the wage sheet. And if the wages are calculated on the basis of hourly basis, then the hours has to be calculated. If the wages is given based on the piecework system, then the pieces produced as that has to be checked and inspected by the responsible person. And also the records related to each and every employee related to the engagement of the work, retirement, dismissal, resignation, rates of payment, holidays, etc. with a specimen signature of the employee. Everything has to be recorded for the safe custody of the related employees of the organization. And finally, a wage supervisor should be appointed who could perform some of the authorizational duties which are said earlier. So the person who must take care of these things when you are paying the salary or a wages to a employee. So this is the approval and control of the documents. Secondly, the arithmetical accuracy. Based on the work performed by the employee or the laborer, if it is hourly basis, if it is piece basis, if it is daily basis, if it is a monthly basis, based on the work performed by the auditor, that has to be calculated. Once you calculate the gross salary, then the payroll supervisor or the wage supervisor has to check the deductions or the additions which are given to the gross salary or the gross wages. For example, tax, securities, pensions, and any subscriptions, any additions like HRA, DA, DA. So all these things has to be checked for the arithmetical accuracy. And the third point is control the accounts. So the movement of the salary wages to the respected employees has to be verified, right? Each and every deductions like tax, then the amount which are deducted from the salary account has to be appropriated to the tax account. Whatever the HRA, DA, pension, gratuity, each and every deduction have their own separate accounts. So the control on those accounts has to be maintained in respect of each and every deductions which are shown in the payroll system, and an analysis has to be maintained by the company based on the budget and the expenditure with respect to the salary or the wages. So the management should exercise overall review and control on the wages and salaries payment system or the payroll system. And the last point is access to assets and records. Whenever the payment is made to the employees, there will be two types of payments. One is cash payment, another is check payment. If the employee's wages or the salary is paying through check, it will be directly transferred to the employee's bank account, so there is no error or a fraud will be happening in the due course of that transaction. If payment is made in cash, so these are some of the points has to be checked by the employee as well as the auditor at the end. So the first one is employee should sign for the wage sheet. Before that only the wages preparer sign, and who verifies the wage sheet will be signed that particular document. Whenever the employee is receiving the wages for the work done by him, so he has to sign, and that will be an authorized way that the employee has been received the salary or the wages. Secondly, the employee should be allowed to take the wages of the another employee. So you can't take another employee's wages for yourself, or on the basis of adjustment nature also you can't take someone's wages. Thirdly, in case of an absent worker wages, so the special arrangement should be made for the payment of the absent workers, and if any unpaid wages or unclaimed wages, the record of those unpaid wages has to be made by the cashier, so that he is going to prepare the list of unpaid remuneration, and all the officers should sign that wage sheet. So he will be giving that particular wages whenever the employee comes to the organization. So these are some of the assets and records which an auditor is going to check with respect to testing of the wage payments or the payroll system. And the third item is testing the cash system. The main objective of testing the cash system is because the cash is the prime importance of any business, because you invested and you will be getting the benefit, and cash is the liquid asset of the company which is most likely to disappear because it needs in each and every aspect of the business. So the working capital is must and should based on the petty cash or the cash system only. So the main objective of testing the cash system are only two, that is receipts and payments. If you are receiving any amount to the company, that has to be properly recorded in the cash book with a documentary evidences. If you are making payment, that is also to be recorded in the cash book and should have a proper evidence or a documentary evidence. So if any records are maintaining, for example, vouching is the art of examining the documentary evidence with the cash book, you all know about it. So all the sums which are due and which are paid has to be subsequently accounted and promptly recorded, accurately maintained in the books of accounts, and if any payments are not done or any receipts were not taken, there should not be any fake records too. So what the internal auditor is going to suggest when the cash system is tested, business should try as much as possible to conduct all their cash transaction by the means of checks or other forms of bank transfer. To control over checks transaction are easier to establish and maintain than control over cash in the forms of notes or coins. So in simple, whatever the transactions which you are dealing through banks, that will be having authenticity as well as authorization. Wherever you will be receiving the cash that doesn't or that lacks the authenticity. Thank you.